You're listening to the ADHD Support Talk Radio podcast. ADHD Support Talk Radio is sponsored by ADDclasses.com. Sign up now for a free webinar at www.addclasses.com. And this is your co-host, Tara McGillicuddy.
Welcome Rick Green to ADHD Support Talk Radio. In just a moment, Rick and I are going to be having a conversation about ADHD medication. It's going to be a great discussion. There's so much to talk about. So with that, welcome, Rick. And can you let our listeners know a bit about yourself and how they can get in touch with you after today's show?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll give you a quick outline of the quick backstory, the elevator version. I graduated with a degree in physics, ended up working at a science center, then ended up entering show business full-time as a comedian, became a writer, producer, director, did a number of educational series, as well as having much comedy involved in them. And then in 2008, did a documentary about adult ADHD, I guess about 8 or 9 years after I had been diagnosed as an adult. And it took off, ran on PBS. It's still running on some stations on PBS. The sequel, ADD and Mastering It, ran on PBS. So ADD and Loving It and ADD and Mastering It took off. And we created a website initially just to kind of have a publicity platform for the program. And it blossomed. And we have 1 million visitors a year, unique visitors, although all of our visitors are kind of unique. And all kinds of stuff there. I mean, 115 short videos on every aspect. And what I love about it is there's now, I think, 76 or 78 experts on there, so most of the top names. If we've been able to be at a conference where they're there, we've been able to interview them. So really, it's been an amazing journey. And what started out as kind of a one-off project has become a full-time occupation, and it's quite exciting.
And the website address is?
So the website is totallyadd.com, which I thought was pretty ambitious for us when we just assumed it was just going to be a kind of an addition or a backup for the program, because we had been warned when we were making ADD and Loving It. The doctors were telling us, you realize this is going to have a lot of people recognizing themselves. They're going to want help, and the resources are just not there. There's a shortage of expertise. So the website was hopefully to fill some of that in, because after shooting 26 hours of video and putting together 1 hour, we had a lot of great stuff left over.
Yeah, definitely a great resource. The website, the videos, the PBS documentaries. I mean, people have been raving about it. So if you haven't heard of Rick Green and haven't been to his website, definitely check it out. So with that, we can get started talking about our topic, which is ADHD medication, which is such a huge, controversial, overwhelming topic. But when you're affected by ADD or ADHD, even if people are choosing not to treat their ADHD with medication, it's still a huge topic that everyone discusses. So
yes, absolutely. And I think it's so huge because a lot of the people who are choosing not to, it's not really a choice that's been decided before they've heard anything. And I was in that camp, I have to say. There was just no way when I first got diagnosed that I was going to take medication. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I hadn't done drugs as a teenager, at all. Like I was, the 1 in 1,000 teenagers who doesn't do anything. And so the idea of taking medication just was not on the horizon for me. And then I got educated.
Mm-hmm. So you just recently finished a huge undertaking, a huge project,
yeah.
And did a video series on medication and ADHD. So let's talk a bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, we've done videos on everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of different aspects. I think there's 18 videos on there covering everything from sleep and tools and strategies and emotional sensitivity and all of these different topics. But the one that we hadn't really addressed was medication. And yet almost every one that we had spoken to who was a doctor or a registered nurse practitioner or whatever had talked about medication often at length. So it was something that we had certainly talked about, but it was not a topic we'd approach just because, as you say, it's controversial. We didn't want to come across as pro-medication because even our documentary, ADD and Loving It, when it ran on PBS the first time, they had real problems with it there because we basically said 70 to 80% of people who try medication find it works. And they said, well, you can't say that. And we said, well, it's true. And they went, is it? Nobody knew. And so it wasn't until CHAD and ADA and other advocacy groups said, no, this is the best documentary ever. It was the first time CHAD or ADA had endorsed an ADHD program because it offered a really balanced view. It wasn't sensationalizing and so on. But, I'm not a doctor, and I know everybody is unique and it's individual and so on and so on. And then with all the different comorbidities that we can have, depression, anxiety, and Tourette's and Asperger's and all the other things that run along, it's a complex subject. And it was almost like this can of worms. I was afraid if we started, I didn't know where it would end. And then, of course, it turned into 5 full videos. And
wow.
Somebody called it 99 short movies or 99 short films about ADHD medication. And that's kind of what it is. It's just all these little, pick a topic. There's a little chapter on it, anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and with 2 to 3 or 4 experts.
Yeah. No, I know you and I talked about this before, that I stayed away from the topic of medication just for a lot of the reasons you do. And I want to focus more on strategies with ADDclasses.com. But basically every teleseminar I do, whether it's on time management, procrastination, we always get questions about medication. So it's definitely needed. So what finally got you to say, okay, I'm going to do this video, even if it's controversial, overwhelming, whatever else?
Well, it's interesting because the biggest reason that people came to our website with the questions were not all, but like the most popular search or topic was ADHD medication. We have forums that have, I think, 3,700 different topics in there, and the number that are involved on medication and on each of the medications and all of the entries, people still want to know. And once you've done the research yourself, it's easy to forget that it's, okay, now I know and I can make a really informed decision and I can try it and see if it works, and if it does, great, and if it doesn't, so on. But it's hard to remember how scary that subject was when I throw my mind back to it. And I realize there's all these people. You've heard the statistic that perhaps as little as 15-20% of adults who qualify as ADHD are even aware they have it. So there's a lot of people out there undiagnosed who may suspect or wonder, but are frightened to find out. And with medication, I think that's the other thing is everyone's frightened because all they've heard are these scary statistics. And so I wanted to take all that out and just say, here's the deal. What are the facts? What is it like? And it started out, I was going to make something called the 15 biggest questions about ADHD medication, and it became the 25. And then it was like, we got to talk about this and this. And eventually, as I say, 99 chapters on ADHD medication. It just kept expanding. And as we went back over all the interviews, I just kept finding more and more and more great quotes and stuff that I'd forgotten that some of the experts had talked about. It's like, oh, that's a whole thing. I haven't even thought about addressing, and it just, as I say, it just got bigger and bigger, and sorting it out was kind of fun.
Was there anything that stands out to you right now that you found surprising when it came to doing this project, and when it comes to medication?
Well, I kind of knew the range of ADHD experiences, that everybody is different, but it was also the range of reactions that people had to medication. So the video has, 30 experts in it, but we then went out and interviewed. Here's the thing. We got all of these experts, and I sat there listening to it, and I said, there's something missing. Even though it's solid information, I realized it lacks the humanity, or I want to hear people's stories. It's not like I didn't trust the experts, but it's one thing for someone to say, that a child struggled in school. It's another to hear someone describing their own child or their own childhood. It's so moving. So I contacted a couple of the local support groups, even though I already had more footage than I can use, and 18 people came out and just shared their stories. It was the most amazing experience. They just sat down one after another, and off we went. And so their stories and their range of experience was really shocking to me, because my experience was I tried it, it worked, and when I need it, I take it. When I don't, I stop taking it. And, maybe I have a slight headache for a day. Some days I don't. It's not, all of the things that I was worried about, that it would be addictive. No, it's not. My favorite was one of the quotes from Laurie Dupar, who said it takes her on average 6 weeks for clients to regularly remember to take their medication. He said, that's not a sign of addiction. And I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, there's nobody who's a smoker or a coffee drinker who gets to 3 in the afternoon and goes, usually I've had 5 cigarettes by now. Have I had any today? Your body tells you, So now that said, there's what was also interesting, I thought, was that learning about the difference between addicted and dependent. And you can become dependent on that feeling. And some people, when they stop, they have a day where they kind of feel lousy, or at the end of the day they feel they have what they call rebound, where they're grumpier than they would have been without it, and so on. But then they're high functioning through the day. And I think the one thing that, I don't know if anyone actually said this, and maybe someone did, but it was the fact that nobody is forcing millions of people to use these medications. They are doing it of their own free will because it works, and nobody wants to. That was the other thing. I got that, it's just another thing to remember, and there's always, I think for anyone on medication, there's always this feeling of it feels a bit like I'm cheating, or do I really need this, or whatever. And I think that's true with a lot of disorders. I mean, I've known people with bipolar who've at some point gone, I think I'm fine now, and stopped, and then had to realize for their chagrin, no, they're fine because they were taking the medication. It's different with ADHD medication. It isn't that necessarily that when you stop. Well, see, there again, the range of experience. A couple of the people who shared their stories, when they stopped, it was dramatically different. In fact, a lot of them, when they was stopped for whatever reason, they noticed the difference very quickly.
So this is a 5-hour video. I mean, I'm just...
Well, almost. I think it's not quite 5, but yeah, it's a lot. It's 4 hours at least, and it's 5 different videos. We sort of broke it up into 5 separate topics, which is interesting.
And what are the topics?
The first one is very simple. It's the first video really as what is, what it is, and that the title is, I think it's called Medication is a Tool, and that's what it is. You're talking about tools and strategies. This is a tool or a strategy, and when it works, it is an incredibly effective tool. What I like about it is that when it works, it supports all of my other tools of remembering to do my yoga, of remembering to do some mindfulness, of remembering to check my clock, and of remembering to all the things that I need to do. And then the second one really dealt with the cost of not taking medication. And that was actually, I think, the most frightening episode. I don't know if people are going to be comfortable watching it, but when you start looking at the rate of undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, one of the statistics, 7 times the rate of multiple car accidents where you're at fault. So this is something 2.5 times the rate of STDs, 4 times the rate of unplanned pregnancies. It goes on and on and on and on, the impulsivity and all of the rest of it. So this, as Dr. Hallowell says in the video, and a couple of other people say, undiagnosed and untreated, this can destroy your life. Diagnosed and treated, you can soar, but you have to know what's going on. So in some ways, it's not just this video series, I think, leaves you with a sense of I need to know about medication, and I need to ongoingly be learning about ADHD and my own particular brand. And I think that's my own particular blend, I guess you would say, of symptoms. So that was the second one, was about not taking it. And then the third is just how they work, how often you take them, when you take them, and so on. And then the fourth one, which I suspect people will watch first, is about the safety and side effects and the risks and so on. And very interesting, because of those 18 people, only one had a bad reaction. And it was only at the end of the interview that she sort of let slip that she was also taking medication for bipolar. And so it wasn't really the problem with ADHD medication, it was this interaction. And we also interviewed a woman, Shauna, who is in there, and she takes medication for her bipolar, and she said, I have all kinds of problems with that medication, but the ADHD medication is fabulous, I love it, and so on. So, but it does get into some of the side effects and issues and so on. And then the last video, which I love as well, is really about what's the role of medication, because the term I think I used near the beginning of the phrase is that it can level the playing field, but there's the playing field. You got to go out and play, and you've got to play to win. So it can really allow you to focus. But as one person said, it doesn't tell you what to focus on. And he said it doesn't give you wisdom necessarily. And what was interesting is a couple of people, one fellow whose fiance passed away, he ended up focused on her losing her and her death. And so he had to go off the medication because it had he was not able to it helped him focus, but it wasn't focusing on what he should have been focusing on, and he stopped medication for a while.
Wow. So it covers, I'd say, just about everything. And the thing is, like, I've been involved in the ADHD community for close to 2 decades now. Medication has always been a huge topic, but I've never really had a resource that I felt great to recommend that. You know, there are some medication resources, but not one that covers everything. And also the fact that it's a video and not a book, I have to say, is great, because people who are brand new to ADHD or who may not be on the medication, a lot of people struggle with reading. So it's going to be easier, more accessible for people to have that video option. And so I commend you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I have to say, it was so interesting. It took, it was supposed to take 3 months or 2 months to put it together. It took us 6 because it was just so much to sift through and reorganize, and one subject led into another and so on. But what I loved, too, is that the final product is these experts who are all independent, and there's no pharma money behind it. It's just us, and we're hoping it sells enough that we can, that it pays for itself, because it was a huge investment of our time, and we're not funded by advertising or by sponsors or by pharmaceutical money. It really is just the sales of stuff in the shop. So yeah, I you know what it is? It's something you said there that really struck me is, I've been around this a long time, and I had so many questions at the beginning, and I think what I did was I made the video that answered every possible question I had at the beginning, every fear, every doubt, every concern. And then what I also found was there were all these other concerns that I had never even, that had not crossed my mind. And so that's what makes it especially valuable, because no matter what you've heard, you probably haven't heard about all 99 topics or however many we address in there and so on. So that I think is another reason why it's powerful. But I mean, whether someone buys this or not, I think the biggest thing about medication is you've got to view it as a tool. That's what it is. Yeah. And when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, for most people, when it doesn't work, what it does is it doesn't work. There's no difference, or they feel a little blah or whatever. My fear, of course, was that I was going to be on an acid trip or turn into an addict and be, selling my possessions, which aren't worth much anyway, and so on. And it was just, when it worked, how did I put it? I said to my wife, it's like having the best cup of coffee in the world. And I don't get the tremble in my hand and all the other things I used to get from having 6 cans of cola. Because, if we're not finding strategies and tools that work, and medication is such an effective one, but again, it's not everything. That last one really deals with the role of medication, that 5th video. Medication levels the playing field, but you need a holistic approach of many different strategies to work. But yeah, getting that the medication works for you, finding the right one, transformative when it works. And if it doesn't, again, somebody said, person after person, I said to them at the end of each interview, what would you tell someone who was considering medication, or what would you have said to yourself if you could go back 4 years, 8 years, whatever it was? And they said, I'd say, try it. If you don't like it, don't take it. It was basically, you had 18 people saying that. Even the woman who said, who had a terrible reaction to it and could hardly spell her name, and for a week was just out of it and then stopped. But she said, do the research first, which is, of course, what the videos are for.
What's great listening to you talk about it, and the story behind it is you produced this video because you have a passion for helping people, and it comes from your heart. Yes, you're selling it and making some money off of it, but you're doing this because you really want to help people, and you're saying, okay, this is where I was frustrated. I don't want people to go through that.
Yeah, and it's funny because we aren't really making money. We aren't even self-sustaining yet after 6 years, so we're trying to figure that one out. It's, because so many people, well, first of all, the internet, who wants to pay for anything, is a challenge for us. And we didn't start out as a website that was going to be self-sustaining. It was supposed to be background information and behind the scenes and some bonus footage from this documentary. And it's now 115 episodes, a shop, forums, blogs, webinars, a whole section of tools and downloadables and quizzes and you name it. And it's, I think why we're successful, I would assume why we're successful is because there is this range of doctors, but it's also, as you point out, video is so powerful. And I'm a comedian, so it's not ponderous. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. And it should be, And,
yes, this video is a small investment if people want to purchase it, but I looked, for what you're offering, marketers could be selling this for like multiple times of what the cost is, and it's definitely worth it, I'd say.
Well, it's, I don't know what it costs you for an hour or a half hour of doctor's time. Here you get 30 doctors, 30 experts. You get 4.5 hours of it, and you can go back if you forgot something. And people with ADHD, we tend to forget things. What was that again? You've got this permanent resource. And what I like about it is if you've got people around you who are upset that you're allowing your kid to take medication or whatever it is, where you're dealing with your siblings who are going, you don't need that, you're fine, and so on, you've got ammunition here. Because I find that's the biggest thing that throws people off of their progress is, well, my brother said, my mother said, the teacher said, the principal said, and we're so sensitive to that. We're so easily thrown off our game, and that is a huge problem.
Okay. And we are actually towards the end of today's show. This really flew by. So how can people, get in contact with you? And I'm assuming this video is available on the website.
Yeah, so you go to totallyADD.com, and there's a little menu on the left, and one of them is the shop. And if you go in there, and the video set is called ADHD Medication Straight Answers to Big Questions. And you download it, and I've forgotten the price. It varies. Sometimes it's on sale. But, as I say, you could sell this for $1,000 and people would get value out of it and say this is more than worth it. And it's under $50. I've forgotten what it is now. I think it might be $40 or less. And it's it's there. It's in the shop at totallyADD.com. And what I would love to hear from people is the difference it made for you, because that really helps other people who are struggling. I'm a big fan of giving positive reviews to things that are helpful, because, well, you know what it's like. If Hollywood spends $500 million promoting a movie, you may or may not go. But if your best friend says, "Oh, you got to go, you'll love it," you go.
Yes.
So.
And people with ADHD are very honest, and they'll tell you the truth. So if you're getting positive feedback, it's definitely because it was helpful. So I want to thank you so much, Rick Green, for being a guest on ADHD Support Talk Radio. And this was great. I'm definitely going to have you back again. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen. If you are listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher, be sure to stop by our website at ADHDSupportTalk.com. Thanks again. I'm going to ask you, as my listeners, a favor. If you found ADHD Support Talk Radio helpful, please subscribe to it on iTunes as a podcast and leave us a positive review. This will help more people find the show, which in turn will help more people lead happier and productive lives. Thanks so much.